cabin stood at the edge of the dense forest, alone and untouched by time. It had been there for longer than anyone in the village could remember. The wood was dark and weathered, the windows coated in dust, and the path leading to it was overgrown with weeds. No one ever saw anyone enter or leave, yet it was always occupied. The man who lived there never came into town, never spoke to anyone, and never showed any interest in the outside world. The villagers had long accepted his presence, though they spoke of him only in hushed tones. Children were warned not to stray too close. The hunters who roamed the nearby woods claimed that the area around his cabin was different, too quiet, as if even the animals refused to go near. No birds chirped, no insects hummed, and the air always seemed colder, even in the heat of summer. Some believed he was simply a recluse, while others whispered of darker things, of strange happenings that could never be explained. One autumn evening, a group of travelers stopped in the village, seeking rest before continuing their journey. As they sat in the tavern, sipping their drinks and listening to the villagers' stories, the topic of the mysterious man came up. The travelers, young and full of bravado, laughed at the idea of being afraid of an old hermit. One of them, a man named Daniel, scoffed the loudest. "A lonely old man in a cabin? What's so scary about that?" he said, grinning as he leaned back in his chair. "Sounds like a ghost story meant to keep children in bed." The villagers exchanged glances but said nothing. They had seen this before, outsiders who didn't understand. Still, they warned them not to go near the cabin. The travelers ignored the advice. Later that night, under the cover of darkness, Daniel and two of his companions made their way through the woods. The path was barely visible in the moonlight, and the deeper they went, the more unnatural the silence became. It was as if the forest itself was listening. When they finally reached the clearing, the cabin loomed before them, its dark outline barely distinguishable against the trees. There were no lights, no movement, no sign of life, yet an uneasiness settled over them, a feeling that they were being watched. Daniel, eager to prove his bravery, stepped onto the porch and knocked on the door. The sound echoed strangely, as if the wood was hollow. His companions shifted uneasily behind him. No one answered. He knocked again. Still nothing. "Maybe he's not home," one of the others whispered. Daniel reached for the doorknob and twisted. The door creaked open. A stale, musty scent filled the air as they stepped inside. The room was dimly lit by the moonlight filtering through the cracked windows. Dust clung to every surface. A thick layer of cobwebs stretched across the ceiling. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books, jars of unknown substances, and strange trinkets that seemed to have no purpose. Then they noticed the papers. Old newspapers were pinned to the walls, their edges yellowed with age. At first, they didn't understand what they were looking at, but as their eyes adjusted, the truth became clear. Each article told of disappearances, men, women, even children, all gone without a trace. Some of the names were from this very village. Others were from places far away, places that no one here should have known about. A cold chill ran through Daniel's spine as he realized that the clippings weren't just old stories. They were records. Behind him, the floor creaked. His breath caught in his throat. The air had shifted. He could feel it, the presence of something else in the room. "I was wondering when you'd finally come," a voice murmured, smooth and deliberate. The door slammed shut.